Today's psalm from the Song of Ascents is Psalm 125, and Adullam's Cave is committed to the instruction of Paul in Ephesians 5 that we are filled with the Spirit. We come under the influence of the Spirit. We're restored, if you want, to top-down thinking as we sing psalms like these to one another. And once again, this is one of the 5 groups of 3 psalms. It's the 3rd psalm in this group, and it has therefore the same theme as Psalm 122. The pilgrims aren't in the position of distress. They're not singing about God's protective care, as it were, on the journey, but they're actually in Zion. And here, standing in Zion, they're looking around at how secure the earthly Zion is. They see the mountains that surround the city that they had to climb over to get to Jerusalem. But their faith, as they look on the city, their faith rises above the earthly Zion to what it signified, which was the heavenly Zion, where the one enthroned in heaven sat, Yahweh, their God, their King. He wasn't in the tabernacle or the temple, but he was in the heavenly Zion. And that's why the psalmist says, Zion that is fixed forevermore. The earthly Zion would not be fixed forevermore, but the heavenly Zion, of course, was. And so their faith would rise as they saw Zion up to something higher. And the permanence and security of the true Zion was pictured as they were standing in the city as a symbol of the security of those who trust in Yahweh and his covenant grace. They would be forevermore eternally secure, trusting his promises of grace. And then as they see the mountains as well around Jerusalem, it would raise their faith upwards to Yahweh, who was the God who surrounded them with his grace and would do so eternally for their security. The song was also very realistic about living under the sun, as Ecclesiastes says, in this world, because evil exists. And sometimes God's people don't seem to be being protected from it. The rule, the sceptre of evil, the sceptre of the wicked in this psalm may appear to be prevailing, and Yahweh's power and his promises may seem to be overcome temporarily by the reign of evil. This was the theme of the first 2 songs in each group of 3, where it seems like those who are trusting in God are in situations of great distress, and their enemies are going to prevail over them. They're at their last gasp. They're at their wits' end before Yahweh intervenes. But Zion reminds the singers to look upwards to the one enthroned in heaven at exactly the time when evil seems to be prevailing and to have the upper hand. That's the time to keep our eyes fixed on the one enthroned above. And there's a tremendous promise in this psalm that the sceptre of evil will not remain over the land that the righteous have been designated by Yahweh. He allots an inheritance to us when he adopts us into his family. And this is seen here as physical territory, the promised land, if you want. But as Derek Prince used to say, Joshua led the people into the promised land. Jesus leads us into the land of God's promises. And our allotment is the promises that God has given to us regarding ourselves, our work, our family, our calling, and our community. And one reason for our confidence that evil will not permanently prevail is that God's people can become discouraged and despairing if the reign of evil lasted too long. And they end up then maybe compromising with it or giving into it. As I was thinking of this psalm, I was thinking about China, Hong Kong, North Korea, where evil seems to be prevailing. The sceptre of wickedness seems to be prevailing. But also in the West, there's an increasing flood of godlessness and intolerance of Christian beliefs and values. And we're preaching the gospel, calling people to repent from sinful beliefs and practices, and even praying for people to be released from satanic bondage could become illegal, for instance, with some of the sort of conversion legislation that's being considered even within the UK now and our own province. People who sing the Psalms are prepared for such times. They're prepared as they sing psalms like this for the times when it will seem the rule of evil has got the upper hand. But they're able to reason with top-down thinking in those times and to pray with authority like this. Here they are standing in Zion, singing about the security of God's throne in heaven, of being surrounded by Yahweh's care forever. And they're given a prayer to pray for the temporary rule of evil. Yahweh, don't let the sceptre of the wicked remain over land allotted to the righteous. And that becomes a persistent prayer until the reign of evil is pulled back and the sceptre of Christ prevails. Do good to the righteous and call the wicked to account in your time. And this is what I've called in some of the other posts aggressive prayer. Not aggressive towards other people, but aggressive towards the power of darkness, aggressive towards the rule of Satan. It recognizes we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but spiritual powers in the heavenly places, and that we have authority to call on the maker of heaven and earth, as he's called here, the maker of heaven and earth, who allows the wicked to even take a breath for another day, that he will remember his covenant with us, deal with the scepter of evil, and help us to possess the land of his promises in our own lives and in our own day. Those who trust in Yahweh, like Zion, stand secure, which can't be shaken or removed. It's fixed forevermore, as mountains that surround and guard Jerusalem. Yahweh surrounds his people too, always protecting them. He'll not allow the rule of evil long to rest upon the land he's given to the godly to possess. For if that scepter stretched upon their land for long, they could be tempted in despair to sin and do what's wrong. Do good, Yahweh, to those who good and righteous are. Rebuke all those who turn from you to walk in paths of wrong. Remove them with all those who behave wickedly. Let Israel experience peace and prosperity.